Namaste, Witchlings. I apologize for the delay tonight. We have been having some interesting technical difficulties today. My apologies. All right, welcome, one and all to Bitchin Witch. This is where Di gets bitchy. I take a current event or two that has me absolutely fucking raging, and I tell you guys all about it. If F-bombs randomly sprinkled hither and yon offend you, this is not the podcast for you. Now, let's get into things, shall we, my friends? All right. Now, we're going to take a quick breath. You can take one with me or not. It's up to you. Now, this episode tonight is not here to soothe you. It is here to wake you the fuck up. Welcome to Bitchin Witch, the space where we name what's real, say the shit we're not supposed to say out loud, and refuse to gaslight ourselves into silence for the comfort of others. Tonight, I am angry. I am grieving, and I am speaking as a survivor of SA who is real fucking tired of watching the same story play out on repeat. This is a content warning here and now. We will briefly be touching on a current situation in the content creator community. So you may want to either mute for a minute or two and come back or such. Now, but yes, that's okay. I'm going to talk for a minute and then we will actually flash the content warning before we get there. Now, if you are currently listening with kids in the room, put on some headphones. If you're here for some spiritual bypassing, this is your exit ramp. And if you are a survivor, please know you are not alone. And I am so fucking glad you are here. All right. You know what? Normally we would throw a graphic up with a content warning. I'm not going to stress that tonight. I am going to say this is your trigger warning right here, right now. For the next 2 to 3 minutes, we are going to be discussing the situation going on with OJAW, I think it is. Off Jawagon is his YouTube name. So we are going to start with what just happened in the creator space. A popular content creator, someone I have followed for quite a while now, came forward and shared that she was sexually assaulted by another content creator. That would be Off Jawagon. They were friends. Had been for a while. They had collaborated on numerous videos. They knew each other. They were out together. There was a big group at a bar, a night that was supposed to be fun and safe and just a good time. And the man who assaulted her? Motherfucker claims he was drunk and doesn't remember, but the only thing he could ask her the next morning was who had she told. All right? Now, let me be abundantly fucking clear here. Being drunk does not absolve you of violence. Not remembering does not mean it didn't happen. And alcohol does not magically turn good men into monsters. It simply removes the mask. Drunk actions are sober thoughts. Now, this wasn't some stranger in a dark alley. This was a man she trusted. Someone she believed was one of the good guys. Oh, you know what? This was somebody she genuinely believed was one of the good guys. Now, if you're wondering why women say they choose the bear, this is why. Because the bear doesn't pretend to be safe. The bear doesn't gaslight you afterward. The bear doesn't have friends rushing to his defense saying, well, he's always been nice to me, or, well, it couldn't have been that bad because you didn't go to the cops right away and you didn't go to the hospital. I'm going to say this next part as a survivor, not as a podcaster, not as a witch, not as a veteran, just as someone who has survived this shit. Being assaulted by someone you trust shatters your reality. It is not just the violation of your body. It is that collapse of your sense of safety, your judgment, and your ability to trust yourself. You replay everything. Did I misread some signals? Did I accidentally lead him on? If I hadn't gone out, or if I hadn't had that drink, or if I hadn't done this, if I hadn't done that, if I hadn't, and then comes the part that hurts just as much, if not worse. Watching people bend themselves into fucking pretzels to protect the man who hurt you. I believe her. I believe survivors. And if that makes someone uncomfortable, then good. All right. Moving on to slightly less triggering topics. All right. Now we're going to move on and talk about murder and all of that wonderful shit. Because, my darling witchlings, my friends, my loves, Minneapolis is bleeding. And now we need to talk about Minnesota. Because just days after the murder of Renee Nicole Good, another life was taken. Alex Pretti. Pretti, thought so. A VA ICU nurse. A Veterans Administration Hospital ICU nurse was murdered in Minneapolis. Just blocks from where Renee was killed. And just a few days apart. Let that hit home for you. 17 days apart. A healthcare worker. A caregiver. A fucking human being. Minnesotans right now are terrified, and they have every fucking right to be. There is a massive heaviness in the air right now. That kind your body feels before your brain can explain what it is. So we're going to talk about Renee and Alex, and we're going to do it accurately because truth matters when the state is lying on purpose. We're going to start with Renee. Yes, I know we have beat Renee's story to death here, but we're going to talk about it again. Renee Nicole Good's last words. Her last words were, "I'm not mad at you." And here is the part that keeps getting fucked up. Some people by accident, some people very intentionally. Those words were recorded before the agent who killed her encountered her wife. Before things really escalated, before her wife mouthed off, and before the agent's ego got bruised by a woman who wasn't sufficiently submissive to his obvious power. Sarcasm, obviously, y'all. Renee's words were not spoken in a moment of chaos. They were spoken calmly, and they were spoken early, and they were an attempt at de-escalation. "I'm not mad at you. That is not the voice of a threat. That is not the behavior of someone who is escalating." That, my friends, is a woman doing exactly what we are told to do to stay alive. And I really need to be clear here. I cannot prove motive. But my experience with men who are power drunk because they have a gun and a uniform, everything I know about power, policing, and fucking fragile masculinity, I honest to God believe Renee was shot to punish her wife for not falling in line. Not because Renee was dangerous, not because she posed a threat, but because someone's authority was challenged verbally, mind you. And the retaliation came at the expense of her life. That's my belief. I will say straight up, that is my belief. I cannot prove it, but I watched the videos and I have dealt with men like that in my life. Bet you dollars to donuts that she was punished because her wife was a bitch in his mind. Now, This is not an unreasonable belief built this is not an unreasonable belief in a system built on domination, right? Okay, now we're going to hop over and pivot slightly and talk about Alex. Alex Pretti was, again, a VA ICU nurse. He was a caregiver, a professional trained to keep people alive in the worst possible moments of their lives. And his last words were, "Are you okay?" Said that while helping another white woman who had just been assaulted by Customs and Border Patrol agents. Now, let that one sit in your chest for just a minute. They weren't, "Don't touch me." They weren't, "Back the fuck up." They were not anything about himself. "Are you okay?" That's who he was. And now we get to address the bullshit fucking narrative being pushed about him. Yes, Alex was armed. He was legally carrying a handgun. He was exercising his Second Amendment rights. And yes, he had extra ammunition on him. And for the love of fucking hell, let's stop pretending that means something sinister. Every single responsible gun safety class teaches you to carry at least one extra magazine. That is baseline firearm ownership. That is preparedness, not intent. Carrying extra magazines does not mean someone is planning to slaughter agents. That claim is propaganda, full fucking stop. The idea that Alex showed up intending violence is a massive lie being pushed by bad faith actors, including Krusty Gnome and her fucking minions, who are more interested in justifying state violence than telling the fucking truth. Alex Pretti was not attacking anyone. He had a phone in one hand and his other hand was up. Alex was not storming anything. He was standing on the sidewalk. He was helping someone who had already been pushed to the ground by an agent. That is not a threat profile, my friends. That is a protector. Now, here's why I'm putting Alex and Renee's last words side by side. "Are you okay?" and "I'm not mad at you." These are not the words of violent people. These are the words of people still practicing humanity, even in the presence of power that did not deserve it. And I need to say this one again because it matters. Both Renee and Alex were white and American citizens. So if anybody out there still thinks this is about citizenship or compliance or legality or being calm enough or being white enough, let these two stories shatter that illusion, because none of that saved them. Now, mind you, I do want to acknowledge that there have been numerous other people shot recently. And yes, most of the coverage is focusing on Alex and Renee because they are white. That does not detract from the other loss of life or quality of life. Now, for those of us living in blue states and sanctuary cities, we know something a lot of people are currently in long vacations in Egypt denial about. It's not if Customs and Border Patrol show up or if ICE shows up. It is when. And that fear, my friends, is not theoretical. It's not political theater. It is honest to God, lived fucking reality. Here's what people also need to hear, and this really fucking matters, because I'm going to say it again. I'm going to keep hammering this point home. Renee Good and Alex Pretti were both white American citizens. If you believe citizenship or whiteness is a shield right now, it is not. If you think they wouldn't do that here, they already are. All right. All right. Now, I think my MCAS is unhappy. Anyways. This month's theme for Die the Yoga Witch is rekindling our inner flame, rekindling the inner flame. And this week's theme is tending the flame daily. Now, I'm going to say something that's kind of unpopular in this respect. A flame is not always cozy, and fire is not always calming. Sometimes the work of tending your flame means speaking up when it would be easier to stay quiet, standing up when it would be so much safer to stay sitting down, and using your voice when someone else cannot. That's why I'm here. For those of us with white privilege, and yes, I am including myself in that, we have a responsibility. If our voices are safer, we need to use them. Not to center ourselves, not to play white savior, but to take the hits that others should not have to take alone. That, my friends, is how we tend that flame without letting it burn everything else down. I want to say something that makes a lot of people uncomfortable, especially when it comes from women, from survivors, and from left-wing witches who refuse to shut the fuck up. Rage is not the problem. Unexamined rage is a problem. Rage turned inward until it rots you alive is a problem. Rage without grounding will absolutely burn your ass to ash. But rage itself? Rage, my friends, is information. It is the nervous system saying something here is wrong and I will not accept it. Every movement, every single fucking movement that has ever forced justice into the light has been fueled by rage that was disciplined, directed, and absolutely refused to be dismissed. And yet we are constantly told, especially those of us in AFAB bodies, that our anger is dangerous. Funny how that works, though. Because somehow state violence is called order. Militarized agents are called safety. And a woman saying no or that is not okay is framed as the real threat. I ain't buying that lie anymore. And I don't think y'all should either. Now we're going to slow down for a second and get extremely precise. Because what's happening around Alex, we're coming back to Alex Pretti here. What's happening around Alex is not confusion. It's narrative laundering. So let's start with what is not disputed. These are the facts as in evidence. Now, according to Minneapolis Police Chief Brian O'Hara, Alex Pretti was a lawful gun owner in possession of a valid Minnesota permit to carry with no criminal record. None, zero, zilch, nada. He was not some unknown agitator. He had participated in protests against the killing of Renee earlier this month. His parents had warned him to be careful because they understood exactly how dangerous protesting becomes when federal agents get involved. Less than 2 miles from his own home, Alex was shot to death by federal agents. And here's another bit that matters. According to an anonymous source who spoke with CNN, whose account was supported by medical records, okay? So this isn't somebody talking out their ass. This isn't somebody pretending to know more than they do. Alex had suffered a broken rib about a week earlier when 5 federal officers tackled him while he was protesting ICE as they chased a family on foot. So ICE agents are chasing a family on foot, and this man steps in and is saying, hey, yo, there's something fucked up here. 5 agents tackled him and broke his rib. DHS claims that they have no record of that incident. But according to this source, his name, Alex's name, was already known to federal agents. So no, this wasn't just some random one-off encounter. There is a good chance he was targeted. Okay, now, let's move on and talk about what happened after he was shot. There was a physician who was present before EMS arrived. Believe the man had an apartment and was watching things from his apartment. He was there before EMS arrived. He attempted to assess him and was initially blocked by the immigration agents because this doctor did not have their medical license physically on them. Who fucking carries their medical license in their pocket? Just a thought. Now, while Alex lay dying, this was all going on. They prevented this doctor from giving aid because he didn't have his license on him. That physician later stated in a court filing that agents appeared to be counting bullet holes instead of providing first aid, and that Alex was not placed in a position where CPR could be performed. When the physician was eventually allowed access, they observed at least 3 bullet wounds to his back, 1 to his upper left chest, 1 possible wound to his neck. And just like with Renee Good, medical assistance was deliberately delayed until it was too late to save his life. That's not coincidence, my loves. That's a pattern. And now we're going to get to the part that is breaking brains. I love this. Watching the heads implode over this. Yes, Alex was armed. He was legally carrying. His gun was concealed. It was holstered. There is zero evidence that he ever touched his weapon. From the available footage and the witness accounts, what appears to happen is this. He is subdued and pinned to the ground. While restrained, an agent removes his handgun from its holster because he never even touched his gun. And then, now I'm choosing my words very carefully here. And then it appears that a round is fired from Alex's gun, after which the agents restraining him open fire and claim self-defense. I am not stating motive as fact. So, I am not stating motive as fact. I am simply saying this plainly. That particular sequence is extraordinarily convenient for the narrative they are pushing. Because once a gunshot happens, context collapses, questions stop, and the entire story becomes he had a gun. End of sentence, end of humanity, end of existence. I need to take a sip because I'm getting worked up and I don't want to start screaming. Now let's talk about how the right has responded, because this is where the mask slips. And this is the glorious part. For years, we've been told Democrats want to take your guns. Liberals don't own firearms. The left hates the Second Amendment and wants it abolished. Except, surprise! There are a lot of us who are gun owners. Alex was a left-winger, a perceived Democrat. I have no proof of this. A liberal. And he was also a law-abiding gun owner. And that reality has caused a full system error. I have never seen so many brains blue screen of death as I have recently. It's amazing to watch. So, instead of grappling with it and trying to, rectify fact with fact, officials have chosen propaganda. On the day of the shooting, Gregory Bavino claimed, with no evidence, that the incident looked like a situation where an individual wanted to do maximum damage and massacre law enforcement. The next day on CNN, he said, the victims are the Border Patrol agents. When asked about Alex's Second Amendment rights, Bovino said, "We respect that right, but those rights don't count when you riot, obstruct, or impede law enforcement." Let that one land. Those rights don't count. That is a federal fucking official saying your constitutional rights are conditional. That is the fucking government agent saying that he doesn't fucking care that you have the constitutional right to bear arms because it inconvenienced him. Essentially. Please don't quote me on that. And it didn't stop there. It didn't even stop with just one asshole saying that his 2A rights didn't matter. Kash Patel stated, "You cannot bring a firearm loaded with multiple magazines to any sort of protest. That is not the law." And Krusty Gnome went even further, accusing Alex of brandishing a firearm, committing domestic terrorism, and stating these opinions as fact. They were not facts. And then government issue Pam Bondi, immediately used Alex's death to demand access to Medicaid and SNAP records and Michigan's voter rolls. They wanted a repeal of sanctuary policies, full ICE access to state corrections facilities, and DOJ access to those voter rolls. That is not accountability. That's fucking exploitation. And here's where their story completely collapses. Bilasali tweeted, "If you approach law enforcement with a gun, there is a high likelihood that they will be legally justified in shooting you." Thomas Massey, a Republican, replied, "Carrying a firearm is not a death sentence. It is a constitutionally protected right." Thank you, Thomas Massey. Never thought I would ever say those words. Even the NRA and the gun owners of America have condemned this framing. They have come out in defense of the victim here, stating clearly that the Second Amendment protects the right to bear arms while protesting. When gun rights organizations say, "No, this is wrong," the narrative is already on life support and failing. This is why Alex's case matters so fucking much. Because if the state can say he had a gun, therefore we had no choice, then the Second Amendment doesn't protect you, it fucking marks you. And if that doesn't scare people who claim to love the Constitution, particularly the Second Amendment, they're not paying enough fucking attention. This brings us to another lie that power loves to tell. The lie that peaceful and nonviolent mean the same thing. They do not. Peaceful protest is about comfort. Standing on the side of the road, off the public sidewalks, waving a sign around, chanting and yelling and maybe singing protest songs, ringing a cowbell, more cowbell, and shit like that, being slightly nuisance, but not actually causing any trouble. Nonviolent protest demands change. Every movement, every single fucking movement that has made real progress relied on nonviolent resistance, not politeness. Women's suffrage was not peaceful. Stonewall. We all say the first Pride was a riot. Stonewall was not peaceful. The civil rights movement was not peaceful. It was nonviolent and fucking disruptive. The anti-Vietnam War movement was not peaceful, and that was the fucking hippies. In every single fucking case, the violence came overwhelmingly from the state. Nonviolent does not mean quiet. It does not mean convenient. And it sure as the fuck doesn't mean protecting property. Because you know what? Broken windows can be replaced. Bruised egos eventually heal, even if it takes some therapy. Lost lives? Sorry, we don't respawn at the closest spawn point, my friends. This is not Call of Duty. Yeah, they thought it was. I will never forget hearing those agents say, dude, this is like Call of Duty, isn't it? All right, now, we are tending our flame here. This is what tending our daily flame actually looks like. It looks like correcting lies, even if it costs you some comfort. Speaking up when silence would be safer. Using your privilege to absorb risks others shouldn't have to take. If your voice is safer, use it. If your body is less likely to be brutalized, step in. This is not saviorism. This is responsibility. This is our responsibility to our fellow man or woman, our fellow humans. Activism. Activism is care with teeth, okay? We're going to start talking about some activism here. Care asks, are you okay? Care sits on the floor with you. Care brings water. Care listens without rushing to fix everything. But care alone is not enough when harm is fully systemic. Activism is what care becomes when it refuses to stop at comfort. Activism asks, who the fuck did this? And then asks, who the fuck allowed it? And then it asks the question that power hates the absolute most. How the fuck do we make sure this shit never happens again? Care is the instinct to help. Activism is the discipline to confront. Renee tried to de-escalate. Renée Nicole Good spoke calmly. She used that tone that women are taught to use when survival is on the line. She said, I'm not mad at you, bro. She did what we are told we must do to stay alive when power has a gun and we do not. She said the right words. She took the right actions. She still lost her life in spite of it. Alex Pretti tried to help. He did what caregivers do by reflex. He checked on someone who had just been hurt. His last words were, are you okay? He acted in care, not in aggression, in service, not dominance. Neither of them deserved what the fuck happened to them. And that right there matters. Not because anyone ever deserves state violence. Never, ever, ever. But because these stories utterly and completely destroy the lies we are sold about safety. We are told that if we are calm enough, compliant enough, polite enough, quiet enough, we will be spared. We are told that de-escalation is protection. We are told that helping others makes us safe. Renee and Alex proved that lie false. Care did not save them. Compliance did not save them. Humanity did not save them. Even the fucking color of their skin didn't save them. And if that is not an indictment of care, it is a warning about power. And this is why activism fucking matters. Because activism does not stop at feeling bad. It does not stop at sending thoughts and prayers. It does not stop at mourning. Activism refuses to let grief be used as a fucking muzzle. When people say, now is not the time, what they mean is, please don't make this uncomfortable for us. When people say, let the investigation play out, what they often mean is, wait until the attention fades a little bit, okay? When people say, don't politicize this, what they are really asking for is silence in the face of power. Renee's story should not be weaponized to demand obedience. Alex's story should not be twisted to excuse a fucking execution. And neither fucking should be used to frighten us back into our corners, our homes, or wherever. Activism, my friends, is care that refuses that erasure. It is care that names names, corrects lies, and shows up again and again and again, even when it costs us something dear. Because the opposite of care is not anger. The opposite of care is indifference. And the opposite of justice is not rage. It is silence. Activism is care with teeth, because this world has proven over and over and over again that gentle concern without resistance is not enough. We owe Renee more than sorrow. We owe Alex more than remembrance. We owe them truth, solidarity, and refusal to accept this bullshit anymore. That, my friends, is what care looks like when it decides to fight. Once again, Renee did everything right. Alex did absolutely nothing wrong. And they're both dead. That sentence right there should shatter the illusion we are being sold about safety. Because from the time we are wee small, we are taught a script. If you follow the rules, you'll be safe. If you stay calm, you'll be spared. If you comply, you'll survive. Isn't that what they told us about George Floyd? If he'd complied, he'd still be alive. The angry black woman, the reason nobody listens to her is because she's too angry and too loud. Renee followed that script. She spoke calmly. She de-escalated. She used that careful, measured tone women are taught to use when power is armed and seriously unpredictable. She said, "I'm not mad at you." She did not threaten. She did not escalate. She sure as fuck did not resist. She was trying to do what they told her to do in the first place. Get the fuck out of here. She did what we are told we must do to stay alive. Alex followed the script too. He helped. He intervened in the way that caregivers do by instinct. He checked on someone who had just been hurt. His last words were, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" He didn't give a fuck about his own safety in those moments. He was lawful. He had that concealed carry permit. He was trained. He was acting in care, but not aggression. The man did nothing wrong, and they are both dead. So we need to stop lying to ourselves about what compliance actually buys us. Compliance is not protection. It's not a shield, it's not armor, and it sure as the fuck is not a guarantee of mercy anymore. Compliance is a gamble. And the house always belongs to power. Silence is not safety. It does not make you invisible. It does not make you harmless. And it sure as the fuck doesn't make you immune. Silence only makes it easier for harm to continue unchallenged. We are taught from the time we are toddlers to be quiet for our own good. We are taught to wait our turn, let authorities handle it, to trust the process. But Renee trusted the process. Alex trusted the rules, and the process and the rules killed them anyway. That is the truth we are being asked not to name and to blatantly ignore, because naming it is dangerous, not to us, but to the story that keeps power intact. If compliance doesn't save you, if legality doesn't save you, if calmness doesn't save you, if whiteness doesn't save you, then what the fuck does? The answer is not individual behavior, though. The answer is solidarity. Solidarity is what happens when we stop treating safety as a solo project. Solidarity says, if you touch one of us, you answer to all of us. When one of the party is threatened, we all roll initiative. Solidarity says, we do not let you isolate people and pick them off one by one. Solidarity says, you don't get to decide whose life matters based on obedience. Power depends on isolation. It depends on us believing that if we just behave better, we'll be spared. Fuck that shit. Ask any woman who's escaped domestic violence if that worked. We believe that if we distance ourselves from the troublemakers, we will be safe. That if we stay polite, we'll be protected. Solidarity breaks that spell. Solidarity is loud, inconvenient, and disruptive as fuck. And that is exactly why it works. This is why movements that changed the world were never quiet. They were not peaceful in the sense of being unobtrusive or palatable. They were nonviolent, disciplined, strategic, and fucking relentless. They made injustice expensive. Solidarity means showing up even when it costs you your comfort. It means using your voice when someone else's is being punished. It means refusing to let lies stand unchallenged because correcting them might make you kind of unpopular. Solidarity is not aesthetic. It is not a hashtag. It is not a statement of values. It is not a yard sign. Solidarity is action taken together again and again and again in the face of fear. And the fear is real right now. People are scared in Minneapolis, in sanctuary cities, in communities where federal agents move with impunity and accountability is treated as optional. Fear is understandable, but fear is also what power counts on, because fear keeps people quiet and compliant, and it convinces us to look the other way. Solidarity says we feel that fear and we act anyway. Because if Alex and Renee teach us anything, it's going to be this. Doing everything right will not save you in a system that doesn't value your fucking life. Being lawful is not going to save you in a system that decides the law after the fact. Being kind will not save you when power feels entitled to obedience. But standing together is the only thing that has ever moved the needle. Solidarity does not guarantee safety. Nothing does here. But it creates leverage, witnesses, and consequences. And that is why it is attacked so relentlessly. That's why stories like Renee's are twisted, why Alex's actions are reframed as threats, and why protest is equated with violence and silence is praised as responsible. Because solidarity terrifies power. It exposes patterns, connects the dots, and refuses to let individual deaths be dismissed as isolated incidents. Renee did everything right. Alex did nothing wrong, and they are both dead. So, we stop pretending the answer is better behavior. The answer is each other and refusing to be separated by fear, propaganda, and conditional sympathy. The answer is saying clearly and collectively, we see what you are doing and we will not be quiet about it, and we will not let you disappear people without consequence. Compliance is not protection. Silence is not safety. Solidarity is. Tonight, my witchlings, we have covered some of the hardest, most urgent truths I have brought into this space. And I want us to hold that carefully together as we land this episode. We started our episode here with a painful but utterly necessary conversation about the assault of a popular content creator by a fellow creator she trusted. We've all seen the pattern before. A group night out, some alcohol, someone we believed was a good guy, and then betrayal. The abuser's defense... good guy. The abuser's defense, I was drunk, I don't remember, is a classic dodge. That's not amnesia. That's evasion of responsibility. Because alcohol doesn't create violence, it simply lowers the social and self-imposed restraints that keep people accountable. And this is one of the reasons women talk about choosing the bear. Because when the threat is obvious, you rely on clarity, not excuses or narratives that protect the perpetrator. You rely on truth and your own nervous system's memory. Survivors remember. Bodies don't forget. And time again, we see that when women come forward, the priorities shift, not to the survivor's pain, but to protecting the reputation of the man who hurt her. We talked about that. And we talked about the why of rage, that it's not inherently destructive, but instead a signal that something is deeply wrong. And then we turned that lens to the ongoing deaths happening here in the U.S. at the hands of federal immigration enforcement in Minneapolis, specifically the shootings of Renee Nicole and Alex Pretti. Both were U.S. citizens, both were 37 years old, and both lost their lives in incidents that have shaken this community and ignited widespread protest and outrage. Renee was killed by an ICE agent during a federal operation in Minneapolis on January 7th. Her death has been officially ruled a homicide by the Hennepin County Medical Examiner, noting multiple gunshot wounds inflicted by law enforcement. Her family disputes federal claims about her alleged threat, and local officials have said video evidence does not support the portrayal that she put the agent in danger. Her last recorded words, calm, human, non-threatening, have been used by some to refute the narrative that she was dangerous. This was a woman trying to navigate an encounter with overwhelming force. Then, just weeks later, Alex Pretti was shot and killed by federal immigration officers during protests that erupted in response to Renee's death and the broader surge of federal enforcement actions in the city. According to local police leadership, Alex was a lawful gun owner with a Minnesota concealed carry permit and no criminal record. He had no history of violent behavior, was known as a caregiver and ICU nurse, was said he was one of those nurses that people remember, and had even been injured in earlier confrontations between agents and protesters. After his killing, federal officials claimed he approached officers with a handgun and resisted attempts to disarm him. But eyewitness accounts and video footage, verified by multiple outlets, contradict that narrative, showing him among a group of protesters with both hands visible, at times holding only a phone as he attempted to assist others. In the aftermath, politicians from the administration and law enforcement spokespeople have described him as a threat and even a domestic terrorist. Despite the lack of evidence and the huge pushback from groups that typically support gun rights, including the NRA and the Gun Owners of America, who have stated clearly that carrying a firearm legally does not justify execution by federal agents. There have been tens of thousands of federal agents deployed across the Twin Cities as part of what's being called Operation Metro Surge, a crackdown that has resulted in thousands of arrests, multiple deaths, and widespread confrontations with residents. Importantly, once again, we see a pattern of medical assistance being delayed or even withheld in both Renee's and Alex's cases, and of official narratives being constructed first and contested later. Physicians who tried to help Alex at the scene were initially prevented from doing so. Renee Good, when the paramedics attempted to reach her, they were stopped. Their ambulance was stopped blocks away, and they had to hoof it with a stretcher to get to her. And the political responses? Those have been deeply divisive. Some elected officials are calling for full investigations, reviewing funding for DHS, and demanding transparency. Others have just doubled down on blaming local policies or even using these deaths to push for policy changes unrelated to accountability for the use of force. And through all of this, we've talked about how fear is not just a personal nervous system reaction, it's a political tool. Fear keeps people compliant, quiet, polite, internalizing wrongdoing to avoid conflict. But neither compliance nor silence protected Alex or Renee. They were human beings who acted out of instinct, one to de-escalate, one to help, and both had their lives taken in ways that haunt the national conversation. And that brings us back to what we've been naming all throughout tonight's episode. Solidarity over silence, clarity over compliance, and truth over narrative expediency. Because safety has never come from obedience. It has always come from collective resistance against systems that do harm. We've said it again, or we've said it before, and we will say it again and again and again. Compliance is not protection. Silence is not safety. Solidarity is. And with that, let's bring this home. We're going to slow it down. Notice your breath. Notice your body. Go out. Spread love. Spread joy. Spread kindness. The kind that shows up and protects and refuses to abandon people. Be sure to tell your loved ones what they mean to you, human or animal, loudly and often, because we do not know when the last chance to say I love you will be. And if you take only one thing from tonight, let it be this. You are loved. You are wanted. You are needed. And you have a purpose even if it's not clear yet. I love you, my witchlings. Stay lit, stay rooted, and tend that flame daily. Let's check what the comments are, what the chat's saying now. I know. Oh, also, this is something very, very important here. I am hearing lots and lots and lots of people referring to ICE and CBP as the Gestapo. Let's not. That is very specific to the Holocaust. This is not the Holocaust. What we need to be referring to them as is slave catchers, because that is the more direct lineages to what we have today. This is a conversation that I have heard and seen in the Jewish community. I have Jewish friends who have brought it up. Please, let's not minimize the horror of the Holocaust by comparing it to what's going on today. Yes, this is how the Gestapo got started, but these are more slave catchers than that. I am terrified, y'all. Straight up. I'm terrified. But 30 years ago, I swore an oath that I was never relieved of. Yes, they were. So, my loves. Thank you, guys. Yes. Oh, the agents are the domestic terrorists. Yes, Raya, you are absolutely correct. Okay, my friends. I am going to go feed the heathens, feed the humans, and try to have a relaxing evening. So, always remember that you are loved. I love you guys to bits. You are the reason I am here every day. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for caring about your fellow humans. I love you all to bits. Namaste, Witchlings.